On today's Ask Zach, we're going to talk about Mike Campbell's wonderful memoir, Heartbreaker. We're also going to talk about the influence of Mike Campbell. Well, hey guys, welcome to Ask Zach. Today we're going to talk Mike Campbell. We've got his memoir, Heartbreaker, here. We're going to talk about it. And then after that, we're going to talk about his guitar playing and his influences, his influence on us, and maybe some of his influences too. And we're just going to have a good time. All right. Well, first off, I need to thank my Patreon supporters and everyone that's ever bought a t-shirt or hit the thumbs up or super thanks or hit the tip jar. Thank you. And that's what keeps the show going. If you want to support the show, we'll go down in the description and and hit the link. All right, let's dive in. Yeah, good stuff. All right, so I heard about this book coming out, A Heartbreaker, and I saw that it was being co-written with a guy named Ari Serdoval. And so I looked up his Instagram page and I saw that he was in Franklin, Tennessee, which is where I live. And so I just messaged him and said I was excited about the book coming out because this was before it had been released. It got released, I think, March 18th. And Ari was kind enough to respond, and he said that he had watched my show before and that he liked it. And he offered a pre-release of it. So before it got published, he had a copy of it. And so he was kind enough to send it to me. And as soon as I got it, I couldn't put it down. And I read 5 or 6 chapters the first night, and then I finished it in a couple of days. And I loved it. And I loved it because it is compelling storytelling. Most music bios get into a couple of traps. One is being salacious, which who cares about that stuff? 2, you have the kind of revenge writing, if it's by the person in question. Or 3, you can have someone who wants to destroy someone's reputation and write a book about them. And then you have, of course, the rare one where it's just a kind of honest, loving telling of the story. And that's what we get with Mike and Ari. It's a fantastic book. And what makes it great is you get a character that he kind of sets the story with Mike Campbell growing up basically close to penniless and being abandoned by his father, his mom having to work her rear end off, how much he wanted a guitar and his mother sacrificing to get him a harmony instrument with horrible action, and just how he ends up meeting Tom Petty and how they start collaborating and playing in bars together and playing for strippers and all sorts of things, and topless bars and what have you, all this stuff down in Florida. And it's just everyone likes a great story, and a great story of people working hard and rising up from nothing. And that's what this is about. It's kind of the American dream, as we like to say. And along the way, he's just really honest about all of the things that go on without going too deep. I mean, he talks about some of Tom Petty's addiction issues. He talks about just the struggles of them kind of being like brothers, but also having him as kind of his boss, and also the person that the focus of the media and the record label, they're focused on Tom Petty. They're not focused so much on the Heartbreakers. And there's incidents in the book where we talk about how things really get explained to the band about how it's going to be by a manager, and how a bunch of the guys bristle, but Mike goes with it. Mike understands the way it's going to work and how the media is going to be focused on Tom and how he's going to have to focus on writing and how he's going to make his money through publishing and how um, he's going to be writing all these songs and he's going to be sending them to Tom and Tom's going to put lyrics to them and they're going to have all these great hits together and he's going to start getting some really great mailbox money just by going with the flow instead of fighting things and causing a lot of conflict. And I think that really influences the way he plays guitar uh, because he serves this, just as in the way he serves Tom Petty, he serves the song. And of course he also has the the luxury or he gets to work with some of the greatest producers on the planet. You know, everyone from Jimmy Iovine to Jeff Lynne and Rick Rubin and everyone in between, and he really learns how to make great records and how to create great guitar parts and to create things that are memorable and melodic instead of things that are just look at me, look at me, look at me. So in the book, he does tell some kind of guitar stories. You get some of that kind of thing, but there's not so much of it that it would alienate a non-guitar player. So you do get stories about him buying the broadcaster for $600 and all sorts of other great things. I don't want to spoil it for you, but you will enjoy it. You will enjoy it. And I put a link in the description so that you can pick it up just through Amazon or directly through the publisher. I think you can even get autographed copies. So there you have it. He's also, of course, he goes through the years and talks about the albums and what it was like working with different producers and just what was going on in the band. And the whole time, it's just a lovingly honest telling. And I really appreciate that because, again, just the pitfalls and how many or just biographies in general that are memoirs that have just been, have really kind of gone in the gutter one way or another. I have to talk about just how I was exposed to Mike, and that was through. I can remember in the '70s hearing things like Sultans of Swing, but also I remember hearing the guitar part to Breakdown, and I remember hearing that that beautiful. I mean, what a great part, and so many other things. And then when MTV came around, I remember watching a lot of MTV in the '80s, and I remember the song "You Got Lucky," and it had a great music video. It had a Mad Max theme, and you see them doing their thing and being in some kind of futuristic car, and all of a sudden they pull off the plastic, and Mike pulls out a Gretsch, and he plays this really kind of cool, kind of spaghetti western kind of guitar part, and I loved it. And of course, what was really funny was it was actually played on a Strat, and but it was just one of the examples of just how Mike Campbell always plays the perfect part. He has the perfect tone, and he always comes up with something killer. So you get this kind of thing. Just killer part. Then you also had things like Don't Come Around Here No More, where you have the crazy video and, with Alice in Wonderland, and she turns into cake and they eat the cake Alice, and it's crazy. Think about especially the censors at that time that they let that kind of stuff go. Then where Mike really becomes a big influence on me is when Full Moon Fever came out. And so kind of just to set the context, on MTV they were playing hair bands like crazy. So you had, everything from light hair band Bon Jovi up to like, Great White and, you know, all sorts of Warrant and, whoever else. And I would watch it and I would, try to glean as much as I could, but it was kind of like I was kind of alienated by the spandex and the big hair, but I still liked, I liked guitar playing and I liked Eddie Van Halen. But when Tom Petty released Full Moon Fever, which was a solo record that, because of Mike's humility and because he'd become such a part of the songwriting element, he was included on that, and of course played guitar all over it and co-wrote some of the songs. When those songs started being released as singles, and there were of course music videos with them, they were all over the place. So Free Fallin' was played like crazy, as was Won't Back Down, or Running Down a Dream. I mean, what great guitar parts. So another one of my favorite kind of Mike Campbell guitar parts would be the solo on I Won't Back Down. And it's a slide solo. And instead of doing bluesy or Duane Allman or Earl Hooker or whatever, plays this really melodic part that's kind of George Harrison-y, but he doesn't mimic George, because Mike has his own vibrato sound and he has his own, with the slide. And I love the song. And, I still go out and play casinos and stuff, like I played out in Tulsa over the weekend with my buddy Paul. And one of the cover, I have to sing a couple songs, every set. And one of the songs I do is I Won't Back Down, because I love it. I love that song. And also, because I'll normally do very country things, like a Merle Haggard tune or something like that. But I love that song, and so I play it. And so this is just, and I do it in the wrong key. Originally it was done in G. I do it in E because I can't sing that high. But it has this kind of groove. And then the slide comes in. Let's try that again. Really great part. I mean, that is stellar. It's melodic, it's smooth, it's beautiful, it's a little mini composition unto itself. And that's why I love Mike Campbell. And I love playing that song because I like playing that slide solo, because it's great. And it sounds like him. He doesn't sound like anyone else. He never sounds like anyone else. He has a lot of influences, like, of the day, like the Stones and Carl Wilson and George Harrison and, Mike Bloomfield and all these other cats. But he always sounds like himself. And it's because he's a songwriter. It's because he's coming up with stuff. Instead of just taking some Mike Bloomfield lick or something like that and putting it on a Tom Petty tune, he's coming up with all these cool melodic parts. And that's the difference between Mike Campbell and so many other guitar players. He's a guitarist, songwriter, arranger, producer. And it comes out in everything he does. And I love, in the book they talk about things like Boys of Summer, which was a song that Mike wrote, and he recorded all this. It was like a Lindrum machine, and he played all the keyboard parts and everything, and played it for Tom. Tom didn't care about it, and then it ends up getting to Don Henley, and of course they end up having to re-record it in another key and all that. But it's a great story, and it's a great part, and he's made timeless music through the years. And huge, he should be a huge influence on everybody. So it's a great book. I need to talk a little bit about the influence of Tom and Mike Campbell on Nashville, which is kind of crazy. So I interviewed Brent Mason close to 7 to 10 years ago. And during the interview, he was talking about how producers give session guitar players references on, as far as what they want part wise. And so they might say, think Johnny Cash, think REM, think, Beatles, think whatever. And he said it got to be where they were saying all the time, think Tom Petty. And then it'd be like, okay, well, do you want kind of the the Telecaster, the broadcastery Tom Petty? Do you want the Rickenbacker 12-string, the slide? Which one of those flavors? And I thought that was interesting, and also had to think back to that time period. Like, this is probably about 10 years ago or so. There were so many songs coming out of Nashville that sounded like a Tom Petty ripoff. And I mean, it's great that they've had a strong influence, but it's sad that Nashville decided just to, kind of rip off Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But that's the way music is, and it's always rolling around doing different stuff. So another thing about Mike is I just love his tones, and really, again, his tone is kind of in his head, and then it just kind of comes out through whatever he ends up playing. And he plays a lot of vintage guitars, but he'll play newer stuff too. Of course, he had a Duesenberg signature model. But no matter what, he always sounds like him, and it doesn't matter whether he's playing a Super Beetle, like he did in the 70s, or a Vox AC30 like he did for a while, or, of course, now he tends to use a black panel non-reverb Princeton along with a wide panel Tweed Deluxe. And, of course, those two amps kind of complement each other. And in that, they have very different tones to them. And, and he always gets a great sound. And he uses, just a variety of cool guitars. And I like the fact that, he kind of has the broadcaster telly thing, or, he used a Strat a lot, especially in the 80s, or a Les Paul, P90s, an Ebo, slide, just whatever it was, sitar, always doing cool stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about the broadcaster that he has. And, it's not all original. It's a Frankenstein. But I love it. I love that it is. And it's like at the time when he bought it in the 70s, there were no books out there. There was no internet. There was nothing. And somebody sold him a broadcaster for $600, this music store. And it's a mix of 50s parts, and maybe the bridge pickup might be later. The string, the 12th fret spacing is wrong. The decal's in the wrong place. The string tree's in the wrong place. It's got a staggered pole bridge pickup. All those things are wrong for a 1950 or early 51 broadcaster. However, I don't care. That guitar has been played on so many hits that you could take any broadcaster and they could be in mint condition and they wouldn't be worth as much as the one that Mike Campbell has. I think that has to be the coolest broadcaster out there. And Fender guitars are parts guitars. And in the 60s, 70s, and even into the 50s, 60s, 70s, people would swap necks and bodies and all sorts of stuff all the time. Pickups, whatever, to make the guitar they wanted. And at the end of the day, who cares how original some guitar is? If it's not a great instrument, who cares? And Mike Campbell's broadcaster is a fantastic instrument that he's used on all sorts of hits. And, of course, it even made it onto the, on the cover. That's obviously his broadcaster, the one that he wouldn't let him, clean it at all. I mean, that is the most, pardon me, badass looking broadcaster on the planet. So there you have it. All right. Well, again, you need to go out and you need to order it. Links in the description. You need to get Heartbreaker. You need to read it, and you will just love it. And then you need to listen to, their greatest hits. Listen to the albums. Listen to Full Moon Fever. Listen to it all the way through. Listen to Wildflowers. I mean, there's so many great albums and so many different eras of the band. And then there's all the contributions they did with other people's music, like the Johnny Cash stuff and who knows what. Oh, there's Carl Perkins stuff they played on too. Such a great band. And, of course, Mike's still around. He's got the Dirty Knobs going now, and he's still out there touring. And so go see Mike Campbell live. Go see him play. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.